Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jeffrey Darty, and I'm here this morning again with R. Wayne Steiger. And this is another edition of Not Your Normal Sunday Morning Show. Glad to have you with us, Wayne. How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you doing there, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. I had a little trouble getting my coffee together, so
And by the way, hello, everyone. Good to see you. Happy Sunday. Uh,
absolutely.
yeah. So,
So what's
what's,
new out west, Wayne?
well, let's see. Fall is here, and we're loving it, Jeff. It's just
Excellent.
that fantastic time of the year. We did notice something yesterday that it seems like a lot of the trees here are already dropping their leaves, and it's just October 1st. So,
Is
are
that
we
early?
going to have, yeah, that's early. The question becomes, are we going to have a hard winter, or are we going to have like we had last year in February where it was 84 degrees?
Well, I noticed that it was starting to turn summer in Florida too because we dropped into the 70s yesterday.
Oh, there you go. Get the,
I was thinking about getting out a sweater.
yeah, I was going to say, get the parkas out, get the dogs going.
Absolutely. So it's interesting how the differences between winter are in your various places. I remember I lived in Lake Tahoe for about 5 years and would wake up to my car being buried overnight. So it's a little different here in Florida, but I enjoy it.
Lake Tahoe, South Shore or North Shore?
I was on in South Lake Tahoe.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. By the way, that lake is topping off, as they would say, overfilled.
It's interesting. When I was there, we had the almost exact opposite problem. So
Yeah. Well, it goes to show you life is a cycle.
life is cyclical, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Tamu and I were just talking about that card in the tarot on last Thursday about cycles with the Empress.
Yeah, yeah. I've spent, I guess, the last couple of days initiating myself into there she be.
There she be.
There she be. A lot to that. Into the I guess the tenements of alchemy,
Hmm.
beginning to understand alchemy as an apprentice, coming into
Speaking of
this.
cycles,
Yeah, yeah. And so I have a question that I thought that we could put out there for today. It says there is an energy that promotes everything. It's everywhere. In fact, science is beginning to recognize that there's this unseen, whatever you want to call it. So I have the question, Jeff, is this: if God is a singularity, God could not be in one single place at any time because it would be the source of all energy. And you cannot have a singularity unless the matter that you're in collapses.
hmm.
And then you go into through the event horizon. That then gets you into what they call spedification. So my question is this, is that if God is the source of all energy, then you could define that as a singularity. And again, that would mean that God could be in no one place at any time. He'd be everywhere all the time.
I
How
see where
about
you're
that,
going
partner?
with that.
Huh?
Does that presuppose that there's only a single God?
Well, I think it presupposes that God cannot be, as I read yesterday in one of the lessons, and I happen to agree with it. There is a higher source than man's concept of God.
I would agree with that.
And what I am learning is that if it had not been for alchemy, we would not have modern science today.
Oh, I would definitely agree with that. 100%.
And I was telling my listeners on Friday that I never realized. Now, I've studied the church, Jeff. You and I have great, rich, good conversations on that, great background. I never realized how devious of a plot the popes had in eliminating the alchemists.
Certainly didn't surprise you that the popes were devious.
Oh, no, no, no. You know, I just never understood, I guess, when they started burning, the Talmuds, and they began to seek out all the other copies of what we would call, what they have called pagan, and really what they were wanting to eliminate out, like the Alexandria Library when it got burnt. That was alchemy. It was the
Absolutely.
beginning of science. So it's been a fascinating couple of days, Jeff, and I'm just beginning to, as they say, scratch the surface.
What if, Wayne, and just let me throw this out there. What if there were a world of multiple gods, a universe of multiple gods? And what if one of them decided, you know what? If I could make myself the only God, I could get all of the worship and all of the power. And the way to remove worship and power from a god is to remove the names of that god or goddess from the lips of men and women. And if I could get rid of all these other names and all the concept of all these other gods and become the only God, then I could get all the worship that is going to all of the gods, and I could make myself the only God. And in time, people would forget about all the other gods, and I would be getting all the worship.
Odd that you bring that up. Now, folks, we didn't talk. We literally just came on here cold. And
6 minutes ago, I was still asleep. I stayed up really late last night.
And so I had wrote some notes, and this is very interesting that you bring this up. So let me add to your thought.
Okay.
All right. So imagine an intelligence, a sentient being that has ascended so far above our intelligence and our ability to comprehend. All right. So I contend that the ether is the unseen force. It envelops everything seen and unseen. It creates the lower form of energy called matter. Now, what if your scenario led to, let's say, a sentient being manipulating the ether and creating for itself the illusion that it is God? Because it's from the ether, everything is created. In fact, as I'm learning, matter is actually the lower form of energy.
Did you just go from pantheism to atheism?
No, because it is well established that there is a life force that permeates everything. That can only be an infinite being. It can only be a creator, a being that we defined that is probably so far above our ability to even to conceive it.
Interesting. And I just got a note in the chat room. I've been doing a couple shows on flat earth, rushing over angels fear to tread. And there was a guy, I don't know what it is, but there was a guy that wanted to debate / talk about it on the air, and he's just rescinded his invitation. I mean, and you're talking about religion, and to me, that flat earth doctrine almost, it is a religion. It's an ism, it's a faith. And what is it about faith and religion that does not allow any discussion and surely not any challenge? And that flows right into what we're talking about.
Yeah, this challenges the whole concept, the whole collective consciousness of God. In my notes, again, I had in here, I said, yesterday I had this conversation. Someone asked me, they said, been listening to you. I got a question I want to pose. And I said, all right. They said, is the Christian God the Jewish God? Or, as the person said, is the Jewish God the Christian God?
How does a God, I'll posit a fairly insignificant God of a fairly insignificant tribe, all of a sudden become the Almighty and the only one?
Hey, that is what permeates. In fact, Islam is predicated upon that. It all started with Abraham. So whoever ever Abraham was worshiping, and I contend what Abraham was worshiping was not what later Moses was worshiping. I contend that there were two different deities.
Who do you think Abraham was worshiping?
I think he was worshiping Enyo.
Okay.
And I have my foundation on is this. Abram, his family, they actually were the priests. They worked in the highest ziggurat that was in Iraq, Mesopotamia, called Ur.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did, they were of a high, powerful position because they were the priest of the moon god. So that's what they built as well. They sold idols. They built and sold idols as people would come through Ur, because Ur was the capital of the Chaldees, which was a part of Sumer. We see throughout the Old Testament, there's 8 different references to Sumer. All the time, particularly look in Zechariah, where we have the flying scroll that comes in, which was clearly a flying craft. And as you read in Zechariah, the angel tells Zechariah that they're going back. The angel almost admits is like, yeah, they worship a different type of God out there. And they were obviously very highly advanced. I challenged in this discussion we got in, I said, well, I think what we should ask then is that if you're saying is the Jewish God the Christian God, then we ought to throw in, is the Jewish God also Lord Krishna? I mean, if you're saying that the monotheism strikes out everywhere. So
what would you say to my assertion that the God of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity is in fact the same person?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Well, and then you get in the conundrum. Well, wait a minute. You've got 3 different religious systems that are, yeah, you could say that they would have a connecting point, but in and within themselves, they're diametrically opposed to each other.
Well, could it be in the same way that the Republicans are quote unquote diametrically opposed to the Democrats?
Well, I'll answer that with this. All thought begins and ends with the brain. So my answer to that would be yes. But it gets back to where we get, I think, Jeff, as a society, as a species, when you start stepping back and you look at this, you begin to go, why is it that we never asked the simple questions? No, like the person asked me yesterday. They said, and he was very sincere. He said, I like you to discuss it. And he said, I want to hear from Jeff. He said, is the Jewish God the Christian God, or did the Christian God overtake the Jewish God?
Lee Veltman says the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Muhammad.
Well, so is that the same God? Yeah.
I think it's eminently provable that Jehovah, Allah, and the Lord are the same guy. No doubt about it. The same entity.
So let's get back to your original point. Is he the one that's trying to control and manipulate the ether?
I would say so, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I never thought about this, Jeff, and folks out there as well, think about this. I never saw matter as being the lowest form of energy. Thought would be higher, right?
Thought would be higher than matter.
Yep. And then there is a place that's even above that. And it's called, this is it's a very strange concept. So the purest form of energy, man has not even discovered yet, because the alchemists teach of the ancient times, the purest form of energy is rest, no movement. And the spirit of life of a man, each of us are given a certain portion, an amount of energy that we will expend in our lifetime. And when you begin to think about it, life in itself is a disturbance to that rest.
Interesting.
It's
So
an
would that
amazing.
mean that if you want to live longer, do nothing?
Mm-mm, won't work, because the forces that I'm a babe here, but I do read. I read over 500 pages yesterday. I just
Wow.
couldn't stop. It was just okay. So we all know instinctively, ladies and gentlemen, we all know this, that there is a life force, there's an energy that permeates us. I mean, Jeff, each one of us are producing 20 watts of electrical power right now. Now, try to build your own little homemade device that would constantly generate 20 watts of electricity. I challenge anyone to do that. You won't be able to do it.
It's almost like a perpetual motion machine.
Bingo, bingo. Now you see it. And so we as a life form, this is that allotment. Now, there is fates that people take on the roads and the choices they make. Well, they will, in fact, basically cut short that energy. You know, death happens. And so this energy, this life force permeates the ether. And for instance, I never realized this. Do you want to go to a place where there's basically almost no gravity? Where if you weigh, let's say, 150 pounds, you can go to a place right here that where you would probably be weighing about maybe 10 pounds. I didn't realize this about gravity. Do you know that gravity has its peak place, which is for us is on the surface of this planet, but as you begin to extend out, gravity begins to lose its dynamic force.
You mean as you go into space?
As you go into space or inner space, do you know that the closer you get to the core of the Earth, gravity is not there?
Hmm. Well, I'm a scuba diver. I know that when you're in the water, you are very buoyant. I don't know if that is a function of gravity or not.
Well, go deeper than that. It is a function of gravity. And so, as you begin to think about the planet Earth itself, there is a place even within our planet, if you could get deep enough under the Earth, where gravity wouldn't have that much of a hold on you. It becomes less diminished in its force.
Would that be true for our flat Earth friends as well?
Well, every person chooses their path on that. And the gravity, then I think for the flat earthers, they're going to have to explain how that works.
Okay. Typically, flat Earthers don't accept gravity, correct?
I don't know.
I don't think gravity is real in the flat Earth.
Well, I'll guarantee you
Mindset.
this. I have fallen off the ladder and busted my butt. And when you knock the breath out of you, I'll guarantee you gravity has an impact on you.
I think they talk about density rather than gravity.
Okay, so they're saying that the atmosphere is basically holding you down. Well, the problem with that is that you begin to do the weight to what you would need in a density of gravity. We would be about 6 inches tall.
Interesting.
I mean, come on, folks. I mean,
So wait, now Tiffany asks a great question, or she makes a statement that kind of comes to a question. If there is this chi and this energy, this ether, can we manipulate it and move things using it, and using only mental manipulation rather than physical manipulation?
yes.
Have you ever done it?
I'm not strong enough yet.
Interesting.
The book I'm reading, and I just took some copious notes to talk about. All right, let me just start with the chemist. The chemist accepts as data such conditions of matter as he finds about him and connects ponderable matter with the displays of energy that have impressed his senses, building therefrom a span of theoretical science. But he cannot formulate as yet an explanation regarding the origins or the end of either mind, matter, or energy. So we take those three foundations. That's when you begin to build upon. The geologist, like a magnet, grasps feebly at the lessons left by the superficial fragments of Earth strata, impressions that remain to bear imperfect record of a few of the disturbances that have affected the Earth's crust. So again, it's man trying to comprehend the very basic elements. And that's what we build our religion on. That's what we build our science on. That's what we build our reality on. And it goes through to the astronomer. And each one, it comes down to this, two things: motion and energy. All of that comes from the ether.
And which comes first, motion or energy?
Well, it's very interesting because motion is a disturbance, but energy is the substance. So you have to almost, like, they almost coexist in a plane. And the interactions that we see with them, I mean, our whole laws of physics are based upon what? Motion, inertia, how things move. The great debate in the physics community now, the standard model, or is there a different model? Again, is gravity, Newton's first law, superior, or is it in fact probably Tesla's law of electricity? And go ahead.
Yeah, that's just fascinating stuff. It really is.
I love this thing about mathematicians, and I think our audience would like this. The mathematician starts a line from an imaginary point that he informs us exists theoretically without occupying any space, which is a contradiction in terms according to his human acceptation of knowledge derived from scientific experiments, if science is based on verified facts. He assumes the straight lines exist, which is a necessity for his calculation, but such a line he has never made. Even the beam of sunshine radiating through a clear atmosphere or a cloud bank widens and contracts again as it progresses through the various mediums of air and vapor currents. And if it is ever spreading and deflecting, can it be straight?
These are deep questions, Grasshopper.
This is where my head has been at, man. I want to tell you, Jeff, it's in a different place. I had dreams last night that were just, the concept of sunlight. And since watch the chat rooms, would anyone please define sunlight? Can you define sunlight? What is it? Well,
does that require a definition of the sun?
Well, yeah, it comes into the whole thing. Here, think about this. We see the sun, right? And it's this harsh, glaring thing. Now, they tell us that there's fusion happening, okay, and they say that
says energy in answer to that question.
Yeah, it is in a degree. So we talked about again. So can energy be manipulated? Can it be altered? Can it be diminished? And I never realized this, but do you realize that sunlight, and here's a weird thing, Jeff. About 6 months ago, I had this thought that in the Christian religion that I came out of, God is represented by light. And so you get this whole image of this being you can't see, you're doing this number. But that is a false reality, because light in its totality needs no artificial explosion. Light goes from the gamma to the ultraviolet. The microwave, you go through each one of it. Folks, that's light. So that gets to the question then. Let's examine our eye then. All of us have eyes except for those who are blind, and they have the ability and the advantage, actually. So,
well, they probably still have eyes. They're not functional, right?
Correct. They actually are seeing better than we are. So here's the question that I say. Let's talk about optics, the optic nerve. And let's compare the optic nerve of a human to to, let's say, the optic nerve of a cat, an optic nerve of an owl. What's the difference? In the organs, there's absolutely no difference, none at all. But yet, each one of those species has a greater field of vision. They can see in the dark. In fact, many of the nocturnal hunters do better in the dark. When we take it all the way to a life form, such as an earthworm, as an earthworm is plowing through, it has no eyes, but yet it can see.
So are you postulating that our concept of light is faulty?
Yes, it's an artificial construct.
Was it created when whoever it was said, "Let there be light"?
In fact, as I'm learning in the books that I've been granted, is that light is in fact created out of the ether, and it is in fact artificial.
So does that mean that the God that says God is light is an artificial God?
Well, I'd have to ask then, what is it defining by light? You see, we never accept these things. We go in ignorantly, and that's what it is. Our species is ignorant. We accept things on the surface that we're told have a spiritual value at face value. But when we're confronted with scientific fact, we will argue and kill each other over it, and never realizing that you just been, and I'll say it out here, you just got under the God spell.
Yeah.
Because the God spell.
Your fusion, you were starting to talk about, they say there's fusion, and we got distracted.
Yeah. So when we talk about light, what we're talking about really is a fusion of matter, in this case, gas. It's a heavy density of gas.
It's not swamp gas, is it?
Well, it's nitrogen is what it is, or helium. In fact, here's something I bet you most people don't know. Do you know the daylight that we're getting right now is 30,000 years old? That is the matter that was burning 30,000 years ago that has now emanated to the surface.
And so I just asked a question in the chat room. I don't know the answer. They were saying, I guess they've heard that in space, you can't see the sunlight. It's not really light till it gets to our planet and goes through the atmosphere. Is that true?
Has to hit matter.
Really? So in space, there's quote unquote no light because there's quote unquote no matter.
Actually, there's a lot of light in space. Again, we narrow our construct to just the visible spectrum that we can see.
Gotcha.
Think if you had, let me just throw this out for the audience. Do you know the most efficient way that a human should have been designed?
No.
Our ET friends taught us this. We should be able to absorb everything we need through our skin.
Oh, yeah.
And we should be able to extract everything that we burn or produce back out through our skin. We got this cockamamie idea, and science hasn't yet got there, that we think that the energy from the sun and these other stars are basically one-way conduits. They're not. There is an ebb and flow of energy going back and forth constantly. We can't see it. We don't know what it is. We can't even comprehend it. But it's there. Listen, we've heard stories of people who have gotten in deep, deep caverns. We're talking 10, 15 miles underneath the earth. Do you know what the odd phenomenon is that they reported?
What is it?
A light. A light. A light.
There was light that deep.
That deep.
Interesting. Where is it? Does it seem to be emanating from a point, or is it all around?
Well, again, it's all around, because listen, folks, what are photons? That's what we're seeing is photons. Do you think a photon is merely diminished because it hit matter? The only reason why we see a photon is because it's registering on the optical nerve. That photon can go right through the planet. It's still going to emanate if there's a receptor for it.
What would you say that light is that deep? Because we would think it'd be darker the deeper you go.
Yeah, it's just, how many times have we found in recent science that what we had thought was actually the opposite?
So you're talking about there's actual observable light in our observable spectrum And orange juice is good down deep in the caverns.
Yep.
Interesting. Is the sun hollow?
I don't know. We don't know that. I mean, our science, we don't even know what the sun is.
Mm.
We really don't. I mean, just like I said, the light that we're getting today is 30,000 years old. So our planet, none of, if you take it through the religious specs, we weren't here. So what was burning 30,000 years ago? What was the planet doing? I don't know.
Now, somebody asked the question, Pate says, so wherever we go, there will be light, question mark. Are the people in those deep caverns emanating their own light?
No, listen, there is plenty of evidence that's now surfacing that I have been saying for a while, and there's others that done more study on this than I have, that we have suspected that there was an environment that bipedals, humanoids, whatever, could survive in underneath the earth.
Right.
And I am absolutely convinced of it.
There's a sun-like thing under the earth somewhere.
I think it's merely the photons that are being emanated from this star that is being receptive and in a cavern.
So you're saying that the photons from our sun don't stop just because they hit the surface. They permeate and go through.
Yeah.
And they still have their luminescent value even that deep.
I believe so.
That's interesting.
Listen.
And Kenny Horse asked an interesting question. He says, so you're telling me that photons can penetrate the earth, but not the roof of my house with my curtains drawn? I'm in a totally dark room. Strange.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Your eyes are not, in order to get complete darkness in your room is very hard to achieve. I mean, literally, you have to build yourself an isolation or what we call deprivation chamber.
Right.
And even then, sir, your eyes, you keep them open, you're going to see flashes.
That's true.
It's a fact. I've been in a deprivation chamber.
One of those floaty ones?
Yeah. Well, they actually had us floating in, it was about 82-degree water. It was highly saline. And it's an amazing experience. And I challenge anyone to, you can't find a completely dark room unless you absolutely build it for that. But I'll guarantee you get in there, you'll see it. It's now, to answer your question even further, again, what we receive on the surface, and I'm just learning some of these deeper thoughts, this is it's raw, it's very harsh energy. And it's like anything else. As you begin to filter, and the earth is a filter. I mean, where do you think you get drinking water from? It's filtered through the earth.
Right.
There are principles and laws that we have yet to discover and incorporated into our consciousness of what we think we know. And Kenny, to answer your question, I ask my audience this: how do you know what you do not know or can comprehend? Because a true explorer, a true scientist, will not summarily reject that which he says goes against his logic. A true scientist would say, I have to hold out a possibility. Although I do not understand it, I can't quite comprehend it, it does not mean it does not exist. Listen, 100 years ago, you talk about a laser that would be in the hands of every person walking on the street, they'd have looked at you and they said, first of all, what's a laser?
Exactly.
Did that mean that science didn't exist back then? Of course it existed.
Yeah. Howard Handy makes an interesting statement. He says, I think we look in the wrong place for life out there. Brown dwarfs are more likely homes to life, similar to how we began.
I think it defines what is life.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we have this, you know what? Mankind is we're a very egotistical race. We're very narcissistic.
Let me bring this up a second, Wayne, so we can, before I forget it.
Sure.
Park ranger says when you walk through the woods during the day, you don't see animals like deer, for instance. You know they're there, but you never see them. Where do they go?
They blend in.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes back to that saying, if a tree falls in a forest and there's no one there, does it make a sound?
Yeah.
And the correct answer is that it does not. The person who says, yes, it does, will argue that they're saying that there is an observer who's going to see it. And what really is a falling tree? It's not a sound. What it is, it's matter compressing down, and it's nothing more than disturbances of air vibrations.
So you're saying if there's no one there to hear the tree fall, it doesn't make any sound?
It does not exist.
Hmm.
Listen, time does not exist unless there's an observer monitoring it or watching it.
Well, it's been proven in the laboratory that particles act different under observation, correct?
Talk about photons, the greatest experiment that anyone can do, and it shows you how thought works. You watch that photon on the split experiment, anything that you think, right or the left, it's going to go opposite. And when it's not observed, the thing that's really bizarre is that it goes both directions at the same time. The first lesson, folks, that you get into physics, that experiment has been done for over 60 years. To explain that.
So when a photon splits unobserved, it goes in both directions?
Yes.
And when it splits when it's being observed?
It will go to the opposite of what the observer is thinking.
What if there's two observers thinking opposite?
That's very interesting, because the experiment still shows that it will go opposite. So
wow,
what's happening here?
So what's the takeaway from that?
We don't understand the basic elements of matter yet.
Yeah.
And listen, I believe that there have been beings here. I think that they are here already. They walk among us. These are, I don't know what to call them. I haven't found the name yet, but they're here. And these are kind of like, they blend in and they choose typically only a couple out of each generation. Can you imagine just two people out of a generation? And they are actually the ones that are the true initiates. And the information that I am learning was never written down per se, because they always knew the opposing forces would try to come in.
That's interesting. As Antigrader says, the other trees saw it, or the other trees were there. So does it always make the sound?
Well, it goes, I guess, with the thought then, does all living things have a spirit? You know, the Indians believe, the Native American Indians believe that trees are spirits. And I'll tell you, you go out to...
That's ominism, right?
I think it is. And, you know, when you go out to Calaveras County in California at the giant redwoods, I mean, there's a life energy there.
Yeah.
I mean...
Wasn't there a famous frog from Calaveras County?
Yeah. Samuel Clemens.
That's right.
Yeah. I grew up on those stories. Loved them.
Those are great stories. He was a genius. He really was.
He was. So, you know, Jeff, what it comes down to is that it's when we begin to challenge, for instance, here's something, food, right?
Davey says, did it fall or was it pushed?
That's what it was doing. So here's the strange thing about it. Food, ladies and gentlemen, food is alchemy. And I'm going to show you why. The material part of bread is carbon, water, gas, and earth. The material part of fat, is charcoal and gas. The material part of flesh is water and gas. The material part of fruits is mostly water with a little charcoal and gas. The material constitutes of all foods are plentiful. They abound everywhere, and yet amid the unlimited, unorganized materials that go to and from food, man still starves.
I
never thought about that.
That's deep.
So a cook is an alchemist. They just never see themselves as that.
Absolutely.
And so much of our professions today, we are beginner alchemists, but we have been blinded by religion And it's really, I mean, this is the only one, they're the only one
Blinded
that,
by the light?
well, I think blinded by a light that they wanted to invent themselves. Listen, if you can control the ether, you can become a god, just like you were saying at the beginning of the show.
Was that
So,
Alice Cooper that sang Blinded by the Light? No,
no, that was Manford's band.
that's right.
Blinded by the light.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. You start thinking about that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So think about this. You have a Roman government that I think were the seeds of several other governments, but they saw the handwriting on the wall. And I believe, folks, this is a part of history that has been taken from us. I believe that there was a battle of such proportion of which were branded as magicians. They were alchemists. They understood. They were teaching. I mean, from anywhere from Hermes all the way to Socrates to Plato. These philosophers that they were teaching us as well of what the true alchemists were doing. The true alchemists laid us the foundation of modern day science. Where do you think the chip that runs these things, excuse me, was made at? It's silicon, folks. Sand existed thousands and thousands of years ago. What I'm trying to say is that because we don't recognize the science or understand it, doesn't mean it has not existed and is yet to be discovered.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
And all I'm saying, and I am not an atheist, let me tell you, you'd be a fool to say that there is no God. I don't know what God is. It's not what I've seen, though, Jeff. Yeah, there it is. So my point to all this is that we don't understand the ether. I mean, it's coming now. What I find very interesting when you get into quantum computing, go and look at D-Wave. You got into your computer out there, go and type in D-Wave computers. This is the God chip. They're the company that has made, and that's what they call it, the God chip.
Yeah, I looked at that. And here's an interesting thought, just what you were talking about with food. Space is Water says, is there anything that says we should not eat meat, as meat seems to be the best thing we can eat, which is natural to the body? It is the most calorically dense. What is your thought on that, Wayne?
Yeah, listen, I think it's to each individual. I don't see a problem with it. I mean, meat is meat. It was here. It's the way of how life is here. Now, if you want to go to a vegetarian diet, that's fine. But here's what I will caution my vegetarian friends, and my wife's a nurse, is that the food you're eating today, even though it may say is organic, it's dead food. You don't understand what's happened to the soil. The soil is not the same that it was even 200 years ago.
It's not even close.
So the problem that we have today, just what I read, all of this food's available, but we're starving to death.
Now, wouldn't the meat also be basically without nutrients because they're eating the grass that grows from the soil?
They didn't say, but it's again, to each way it works is how they convert and store the energy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're eating. It's really, I'll put it how the master here wrote in here, is that actually what you're eating is nothing more than stored up sunshine. That's all it is.
We should be able to subsist on sunshine directly.
Exactly. And so when I got back to the whole point, what's the most efficient way for humans, bipedals, to actually process food? It's through our skin. That's the way.
We need a digestive system were that the case?
You would not. Now, can you imagine how, now think about this, folks. This blew my mind last night when I was reading this. Could you imagine a species that did not have to convert so much of its internal core energy in the processing of energy, that would then go directly to the organs that would require the most energy?
Interesting.
Because we know mental capacity drops for 30 minutes after you eat a heavy meal.
Mental capacity drops.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Why? Because your body has to focus all of its energy in digesting that material.
That's true.
It's just how it is. And so the ancient man worshiped the sun, and I never really saw it as this before, but I thought it was interesting. They worshiped the sun because the sun represented a reservoir of food.
Hmm.
As long as the sun was shining, the crops were going to grow. You worship the sun because it is the life giver. Ah, can you imagine that? Now you just convert that over to religion.
Yeah.
It's like this. They said, I like how it says, there is a God greater than man's thought, image, or idea. And I believe that. I don't think he's a vindictive. I don't even think it's a he. I mean, we get this whole thing. We speak in vernaculars of which we're used to, but whatever it is, I don't think it's either. My whole point is, I don't think it really is bad or good. You choose a path, you're going to bring in the consequences of that path, no matter what the path is. And that even goes to the sensation of death. Let me just read this. There is a God in the beyond, past your idea of God. Perhaps to beings of higher mentalities, we may be heathen. But even if this is so, duty demands that we revere the God within our intellectual sphere. Think about that, Jeff. I think that is a form of worship. And it's not one that's being, basically coerced or in any way demanded upon you. If you have thought, how can you not say that there's something above your thought? That's reverence.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that it is that we need to confirm within us all so that we no longer have to digress into a conversation of this nature. There is a supreme creator. And may I say that the food of man and the organic life of man is from that creator.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And as I'm reading this, Jeff, and, I'm like you, 40 years of indoctrination.
It's a lot.
Boy, I mean, you're slashing at it all the time because the damn tentacles come back up. We used to have down in Texas a weed called devil weed. And the thing about it is the reason why we called it devil weed, because the root goes all the way to hell.
Right.
I mean, I have literally dug at least 4 foot down on one of those things and the root still goes down.
Yeah.
So I could get into another part of explaining what gravity is. Gravity is one of those mysterious forces to this day. We can't figure out, does gravity control the universe? Because it certainly seems to be selective. It certainly seems to have odd properties, that it can be bent, it can be warped, it can be folded. These are all things that Einstein theorized. And when we started getting Hubble, we began to see much more. We could see planets, how they actually ripple the fabric of gravity. I mean, so even the science that we thought we knew, we're still just beginning to understand. It says, however, gravitation neither escapes by radiation from bodies nor needs to be replenished. So far as we know from without, it may be compared to an elastic band, but there is no intermediate tangible substance to influence bodies that are affected by it. It remains in an underlying tension. Unlike all elastic material substances known, neither losing nor acquiring energy as time passes. Unlike cohesion or chemical attractions, it exerts its influence upon bodies that are out of contact and have no material connection. And this necessitates a purely fanciful explanation concerning the medium that conducts such influences, bringing into existence the illogical, hypothetical fifth ether made conspicuous by Aristotle.
Aristotle, he was a smart guy.
Yeah, he had it almost all right. He made some mistakes, but
And people don't realize, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it goes back to even, I don't know if you could say Socrates was smarter than Plato, was smarter than Aristotle. I don't know if you could go Socratic with it, but they were all pretty smart guys.
They said that Socrates would actually just zone out for hours.
Yeah.
Wherever he was at, I want to get there. So I told you at the beginning of this, it says rest, motion, no disturbances. That's the purest form. And that's who I think the infinite being must be at.
So is life itself as we know it a disturbance?
Yes.
So are we a disturbance in the fabric of the universe?
We are.
We are. So should we all just go kill ourselves and rid the universe of this plague?
No, because I think that what we are supposed to be doing, they said in here that the one thing that's holding mankind back, and it has for thousands and thousands of years, is basically we are selfish, individually and collectively. And here, I'll prove it to you. Everyone listening here thinks that the situation with other humanity is bad. We send good thoughts, etc. We do whatever we can. But when it gets right down to the basics, you're going to be more concerned about you, whether you have food and shelter. Then you can go out and become a humanitarian.
Right.
The day that we abandon that, think what will happen. And that's
Steve Beltman says, don't tempt karma. She can be a little fickle. But the truth is that karma is only a bitch of you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It feeds off exactly. And again, it goes back to that thought. Who are we?
Someone senses a disturbance in the force, Wayne.
Where do you think they got that at? You know, how it's a very good observation. So we see it in our genre and our entertainment today. And these things we hear, and unfortunately, now when you say that there's a disturbance in the force field, well, you get these opposing views. Well, that's just Eastern mythology, or that's just make-believe. Come on, it's a script. No, actually, it shows to me that there was some pretty enlightened individuals that are trying to get a message to us.
And that's just the whole Western Christian thought. Oh, that came from the East, not from us, so it's got to be wrong.
Bingo. And that's how it is, folks. It's this great divide, spiritually, mentally, and intellectually. And here's the thing. If the stories that I'm hearing of these star children that are starting to show up, folks, they're coming out of the East. We got a few over here, but not as many as the ones that are showing up over there. These children are not like us. They are smart. They have an intellectual prowess that goes above our intellect.
Absolutely. Well, we've had a random flat earth reference and a random Christian reference in the chat room. So I feel like everything's okay now.
Yeah. You know, listen, it's sometimes hard. I mean, if I'd have heard this 10 years ago, Jeff, I would have rejected it summarily.
Absolutely.
It would have been offensive to me. It would have been blasphemous in its tone and its conjecture. But
absolutely.
I mean, you know this. It's hard. Listen,
we didn't even talk about the genetically modified nature of all the stuff that's grown today, not to mention the depletion of the soils.
Yeah, and again, genetically modified. What were we thinking?
I mean, that's the same thing as chimeras, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, what's the purpose of this? The earth couldn't do a good enough job. Man had to come in and somehow alter the genetics of what was basically perfected already. You know, one of the things they keep making reference to this as I'm reading this, there's a big fear amongst and I don't know what to call them, but they are very concerned about the technology that we have around us. It's not indicating anything good for us. We don't need it.
Is it the creation of new gods almost?
It is, because listen, yesterday I was in this group And I told them, someone said, well, I'm going to go to Google. And I said, so you're bowing? You're going to go make homage to the new God of knowledge? She turned around and she looked at me and she got the sudden blank on her face and she said, oh my God, you're right. She says, that's all my kids. That's everything at work. She said, I never saw it as a form of worship. I said, well, sure. You've got to go and worship this God in order to get the information back. People say, all I'm doing is just typing in. No, you are not just typing in. You're making a request to a deity.
Well, Google would at least be the great oracle.
At least, at the very minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't think that, listen, the other thing I'm learning, folks, there's life around us. There are worlds occupying the same space that we are. It's just in a different dimension. We can't see it.
Right.
It doesn't mean it doesn't. They're all around us.
Can it get too crowded?
I think it can. I really do.
And what happens when it gets too crowded?
Well, you know, the new tenant typically will move out the old.
And don't you? I mean, what happens when you get too much information on your hard drive? What do you do?
Well, you begin to start wiping it clean.
Exactly.
Delete it. I don't know if this technology is going to do us what we say it is. You would think by now, just by the exponential, let's say when I started getting in, when we were developing e-commerce back in 1997, e-commerce didn't exist. And I was with my company and we were developing what was going to become e-commerce. And take it from there to where we are today, the exponential advancement in both the amount of information and technology. This technology was supposed to go out and help the poor. It was supposed to go out and eliminate starvation. It was supposed to eliminate disease. We've got computers now that can outthink man. Are you telling me we can't break the code to a cell and understand the proteins and the other parts of a cancer cell? No, folks. Come on, let me just be very candid with all of us. We are sheep. And let me tell you, you just take one evening and watch television and count how many pharmaceutical commercials you see. Folks, that's programming and conditioning. The reason why they allowed that law to go through, and that law was done by the Clinton administration, was that they knew it. You've got pharmaceutical companies now going to the consumer, telling the consumer what the doctor should be prescribing.
And you got to remember, before this Clinton decision, there were no advertisements of those products on television.
None. And now you've got uninformed people who think they know, and that's our problem. I
just want them to outlaw the Summer's Eve commercials. I don't like those. Those are uncomfortable. I'm sitting there watching TV with my mom.
It's so subtle, Jeff. It's inconspicuous. It's innocuous. And once it gets in, the earworm gets planted. Very hard to get it out.
So it was an indirect effort at influencing doctors, really.
Yeah, it was.
All the patients to come in and ask. All right, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
And what do you see the most of by any of them?
Well, today I keep on. It's really weird. Diabetes.
Don't you see a lot of erectile dysfunction ones as well?
Not anymore.
No, I don't watch TV, so.
Yeah, I actually do a monitoring on this because to me it's alarming. I mean, when you look at advertising budgets, you go to Ad Age, look at who's spending the most. It's the pharmaceuticals. And folks, the thing is, they'll never cure any disease. To cure a disease means they lose you as a paying customer.
Right. They're not looking for cures. They're looking for customers.
That's what they're looking for. And today, when you think about it, 6 out of...
Wayne, you froze up on us. I think I'm still okay, so we'll press on. It's funny. People are saying in the chat room that Summer's Eve, they're always wearing white pants, which is interesting, I guess. I'm not sure that exactly what we're talking about there, but it does seem to be interesting. Shauna doesn't see erectile dysfunction or smoke patches anymore. That's very interesting. So I guess I should. Sometimes I don't watch television at all, so I don't get to see this. Human growth hormones. Interesting. And Red Rose Rocker, I think Wayne was being, I don't think he was talking literally about worms in ears. I think he was being, he was drawing an analogy. So take a deep breath. It's okay. Yeah, and sometimes you do wonder if the gremlins don't like it. Howard, I don't think Wayne was saying that at all. I don't know. Oh, wow. It's interesting. People get going and people get going. Very interesting stuff, though. And that's what this show is about, is really to get you to start thinking for yourself, to start asking questions, to start questioning answers. That's what this is really all about. Because once you think that you know the answers, that's when you really know that you don't. And that's why you should question every answer that you hear, every answer that you get, even the answers that you come up with yourself. You need to question those answers, constantly be examining, constantly be looking, constantly be digging. You just have to keep asking questions. You just have to keep questioning answers. Wow. Now we got this chat room is fascinating to me. Nothing shall harm us, said Christ. No snake bite, no scorpion sting. Wow. Anyway, I don't even know what to say to that one. So we'll just move on. It has been an hour. It was a great show. I'm sorry that we lost Wayne. And, you know, I sit here sometimes, I'm just like, wow, that's deep. Wow, that's deep. Because there's things that I don't think about the whole rest of the week. Trump retreat. That's funny. Very, very good stuff. Very, very good stuff. I like it all. It's interesting. And this is a place where you can come to find out about stuff like Philosopher's Stone and alchemy and ether, stuff that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Very, very interesting stuff. So, folks, I'm going to be back throughout the day. I know Wayne's going to be back throughout the day. And maybe instead of watching the NFL, watch some good programming here from R. Wayne Steiger. Watch Channel 27. Watch The Leak Project. Watch Tom Muangina. Even watch this, Lunar Orbit. All kinds of interesting and fascinating stuff going on. I'm still in the middle of some discussion about the flat earth theory. We've had a couple of shows on it, probably got a couple more to go. And it is just interesting. It's just powerful. And it is a way to open your mind. And like Method Man said, if you free your mind, your donkey will follow. So think about that. Free your mind. That's where it all starts. Thank you to all of you in the chat room. Thank you to the contributions that you make. Thank you for R. Wayne Steiger being with us. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I salute you as those that are seeking truth. And remember, folks, it's either the world gone crazy or you. I'm just here to help you figure out which. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, helping you to unindoctrinate yourself.